Kang, of the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing and Diversity and Inclusion. I'm delighted to be one of your co-MCs for tonight's special event, along with my colleague, MP Andrew Dillon, Member of Parliament for Dorval, Lachine, and LaSalle. Before I go any further, I would like to acknowledge that every day across Canada, we live, perform, and create on the traditional territories and homelands of First Nations, Inuits, and Métis people. This evening, we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territories of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. To everyone here with us today and across Canada, happy Asian Heritage Month. We are honored and grateful to have you all here with us in person as we celebrate the many past and ongoing contributions that Canadians of Asian heritage have given to the country we all know and love.
Bonsoir et bienvenue à cette célébration officielle.
Good evening and welcome to this official celebration. I would like to wish you a good Asian Heritage Month. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today, and I'd like to say that I fully agree with Paul. Our communities have contributed to make of Canada what it is today, and it's with humility that I'm your co-facilitator. Before starting the facilities of this evening, I'd like to present and invite Elder Claudette Commanda of the Anishinaabe community, Kirigan Zibi. And Commanda, I would like to offer you this tobacco as a gift.
Greetings to everyone. I'm not sure if is it soon 7 o'clock? Because I'm told that the sprinklers will come on at 7. And I don't want the sprinklers to come on at 7. Otherwise, guess what? You know what's going to happen, right? Is it soon 7 o'clock?
It's 6:51.
Okay, I'm going to light it, but I won't light too much of it. Just because the sacredness of the medicine is very important. Some people call it a smudge, but it's a purification ceremony. But it's more than that. It's honoring the spirits, and it's asking the Creator for help. And it's to honor all of creation. Koi kakina. Bonjour tout le monde. Hello everyone. Hello.
Hello.
We have to be more enthused. We haven't seen one another for 2 years. So let's just find it deep in our spirit and in our heart and in our voice. And let's give greetings to one another in such a beautiful, loving, and exciting way. Because what are we celebrating? We're celebrating Asian Heritage Month. What a time to celebrate. So let's say hello. Let's greet one another with that kindness, with that love, with that respect as brothers and sisters. And I'm very honored to be here to bring greetings on behalf of the Algonquin people. I'm very honored to welcome each and every one of you beautiful people, whom I call my friends, whom I call my relatives. So important. Honorable ministers, members of the Asian communities. I welcome each and every one of you beautiful people. Pijajikoma, Pijajik Anishinaabe Aki O Mama Weniniwag Pijajik. Kanimit Shkijigun Kinuni Dishnakas Kitagan Zibi Donjabon. Bienvenue au territoire ancestral.
Welcome to the ancestral territory of the Algonquin Nation.
One of you beautiful people to this unsurrendered, unceded homeland of the Algonquin people. The homeland that the Creator entrusted onto us since time immemorial, and the homeland that we must ensure will be your forevermore. In our creation story, we knew that the Creator would send peoples from all over the world to come upon our land and to settle here. And in our creation story, in our teachings, and in our laws, our responsibility is to share and to welcome. Welcome. And I look across this room in the circle here, and I see brothers and sisters from the corners of the world, and I welcome you into my people's homeland. And thank you. Thank you for acknowledging. Thank you for acknowledging the homeland of Indigenous peoples from coast to coast to coast, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. Thank you. That acknowledgement, that respect, that honor, this is reconciliation. Absolutely it is. And when we come together to celebrate one another's culture, one another's identity, one another's ways of knowing and doing and being, that is reconciliation. It's respect, it's kindness, it's love. Kishiminado, migwajonje kakinanichkiwe dug migwej kishiminado. Creator, I acknowledge every person who is here, and I thank you, Creator, for bringing us together. Chimigwej. No matter where we come from in this Mother Earth, north, south, east, west, central, know that you are all part of creation and what we call the medicine wheel. As we give thanks to the Creator and we say, Chimigwej Kijimanano, Migwej Kinakego. We thank the Creator for the joy of living. We honor our Mother, the Earth, that one mother for all. We say, Chimigwej Kokomis Jojoaki. We acknowledge that first grandfather whom the Creator has blessed every person with, that first grandfather whom we call Mishomiskizis, our grandfather, the sun. We acknowledge that first grandmother that the Creator blessed us with, all peoples. And we acknowledge her and we say, Chimigwej Kokomistipagizis, thank you to our grandmother moon. We acknowledge our ancestors as I acknowledge my ancestors. Chimigwej Nijenwendaganag, I acknowledge the first ancestors of this land, the Algonquin ancestors. I acknowledge the ancestors of Indigenous peoples across Canada, as I acknowledge the ancestors of Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island, commonly known as North America. But ladies and gentlemen, friends, all of us here, I acknowledge your ancestors. Are they not beautiful? Are not our ancestors beautiful? But for our ancestors, we would not be here. And look at the love and the kindness and the blessing that our ancestors have brought here tonight. They brought you here. They brought you here to celebrate Asian Heritage Month and know that every day, celebrate your culture, celebrate your people. And I thank you for including me to be part of your celebration, because I include you in my celebration as an Anishinaabe Algonquin woman. Thank you. Chimigwej Nichkiwedok. Enjoy, and just have fun. Migwej.
Miigwech Elder Commander. It has been an honor to have you among us this evening for your blessing for our event tonight. As we all know, this year marks the 20th anniversary of Asian Heritage Month. And one of the main reasons we're able to celebrate this evening is because of the efforts of former Senator Dr. Vivian Poy to have the Government of Canada recognize the immense contribution our communities make to our country. For me personally, I arrived in Canada 46 years ago from Pakistan, and my parents are from China originally. My family is from China originally, but I came from Pakistan 46 years ago. And for me, Canada has been a great home for me and a great land for me and my kids and my grandchildren. So I'm so happy to be here today as part of this community, celebrating with all of you. And for me personally, every month is Asian Heritage Month. That's why the Government of Canada chose the theme, Continuing a Legacy of Greatness. This theme highlights not just a past act of greatness by our communities, but also acknowledges and celebrates the many young people who are creating their own legacy by making a positive impact in towns and cities from coast to coast to coast. So tonight, as we honor our past greats and reflect on our incredible accomplishments, let us continue to take pride in how we have helped shape this country that we are all proud to call home. We have a fantastic lineup of presenters, performers, and speakers tonight. So without any further ado, I would now invite the the Chinese Canadian Children's Choir of Canada to the stage for the national anthem. Thank you to the Chinese Canadian Children's Choir of Canada for your beautiful rendition of our national anthem. It is now my distinguished pleasure to invite the Honorable Ahmed Hussein, Minister of Housing and Diversity and Inclusion, to the stage for his opening remark. Please join me in welcoming Minister Hussein to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir à tous. Thank you, Paul, for that introduction. And a big thank you to Andrew Dillon for all your hard work as we continue to build together a more inclusive and diverse Canada. I'd also like to thank Elder Claudette Commander for that smudge ceremony and land acknowledgement. And of course, a special thank you goes to the Chinese Canadian Children's Choir for that beautiful rendition of our national anthem. Once again, let's give them a round of applause. C'est un plaisir d'être ici avec vous.
It's a great pleasure to be here with you today for this special occasion.
Friends, colleagues, members of parliament, ministers, diplomats, dignitaries, and members of the public, thank you so much for being here. And I want to begin by also acknowledging that we're joining together and gathered on Indigenous territory, the traditional and unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin peoples, otherwise known as Ottawa. To everyone joining us here today and right across our great country, happy Asian Heritage Month. Je vous souhaite un joyeux mois du patrimoine.
I wish you a good Asian Heritage Month to all of you.
To be here to kick off Asian Heritage Month 2022 with Minister Ng, Minister Sajjan, and many others, as we recognize the immense past and ongoing contributions that Asian Canadians have made and continue to make to the country we love and adore. This year is particularly special as we gather to mark a special milestone. And as Parliamentary Secretary and Member of Parliament and my friend Paul Chang just stated earlier, it's been 20 years since the declaration of May as Asian Heritage Month in Canada. And I want to take this moment to recognize the Honorable Dr. Vivian Poy, who's one of the reasons why we're able to gather here tonight. I always say that in Canada, diversity is a fact, as shown in this room, but that inclusion is a choice. And as Dr. Poy has shown throughout her life, we're stronger as a country when we make the conscious decision to include everyone in the great work of building a greater and more prosperous and more equitable and just society. Though she wasn't able to attend tonight's festivities, we're forever grateful for her work as a barrier-breaking trailblazer, as a tireless champion of human rights, of the values of representation, diversity, and inclusion. So Dr. Poy, if you're watching now, thank you for all that you have done and that you continue to do. Merci pour tout.
Thank you for everything.
As everyone here knows, the legacy of Canadians of Asian heritage is a proud one that spans hundreds of years in Canada and across all aspects of our society. And that speaks to why this year's theme for Asian Heritage Month is continuing a legacy of greatness. From Naranjan Singh Grewal, who was the first Indo-Canadian mayor in Canada, to award-winning author Kim Tui and spoken word poet Khalifa Hamdan, also known as Apollo the Child, the various Canadian communities of Asian heritage have helped make our country what it is today. The positive everyday impact we see from so many communities speaks to the values that we as a country hold dear, values like compassion, hard work, and perseverance. That's what makes us who we are today, and it is what Canadians of Asian heritage embody each and every day. And so as we gather together for the first time in 2 years to celebrate the contributions of so many communities in Canada, we must also take a moment to recognize the hard work of the people who have gotten through these incredibly difficult times. Whether it was spearheading our response to a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, helping our most vulnerable in hospitals, shelters, and homes in towns and cities across this country, Canadians of Asian heritage have given so much to our communities, sometimes missing birthdays and other personal milestones to serve other Canadians. On behalf of a grateful country, I want to say thank you to these everyday heroes for everything that they have done and that they continue to do as we emerge from this pandemic. And this month, as we gather together to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Asian Heritage Month, we must also take a moment to acknowledge the very difficult circumstances that many Asian Canadians have experienced in the last number of years. We see anti-Asian hatred and intolerance around the world, and here at home, it is on the rise. No one, absolutely no one, should have to worry about facing the indignity of racial slurs. No senior of Asian heritage should have to walk down a street in fear that they may be violently attacked. Personne ne devrait endurer.
And nobody should be targeted simply because of their identity.
We're united in our fight against anti-Asian racism. And we're taking steps to tackle it through our national anti-racism strategy. And just recently, we wrapped up community consultations to create the first ever national action plan to combat hate. And I really want to thank PS Paul Chang for his leadership in this role and for helping the government chart that plan together. We will continue to stand with Canadians of Asian heritage in the fight to end discrimination and hate from coast to coast to coast. We will never waver in our fight against discrimination and racism wherever it may be and whomever it may target. And as we gather here this evening, let's enjoy this time that we have to celebrate the contributions and the continued legacy of greatness that Asian Canadians have demonstrated and Asian Canadian communities have shown in Canada from coast to coast to coast. And you know, someone recently asked me, why are we doing Asian Heritage Month? Why bother? It's because we want to demonstrate that in Canada, we celebrate our differences. Our differences can and are a source of strength. We are demonstrating every single day to the world in a very selfless manner that we in Canada are not only able to welcome everyone from around the world, we're also not only able to live together, but actually embrace each other, work together, and collectively build a stronger and more prosperous country. That is an example to the rest of the world today. As you see conflicts based on religion and language and intolerance, based on those kinds of circumstances. And so by celebrating Asian Heritage Month, we are not only highlighting the contributions that Asian Canadians have made and continue to make to Canada, we're not only standing in solidarity with the community, we're showing the world how it is that Canada is able to welcome people from all around the world, including Asian Canadians, and invite them and embrace them to not only become citizens, but become members of our family. Merci encore une fois d'avoir.
Thank you once again for being present here today, and I wish you an excellent evening.
Asian Heritage Month, and I want to, end on a personal note. One of my moments that really I recollect every single time that I think of our place in Canada is sitting in my constituency office as the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship a number of years ago, and meeting a group of Vietnamese Canadians, some who were boat people and others who were descendants of boat people, who were extremely successful in our country, in all sorts of professions and backgrounds in Canada. And we sat together, and I was trying to guess why they had come to see me, maybe about a project or some sort of funding for a community center. But they had actually come to ask me how they and us in the government of Canada can work together to welcome Syrian refugees to Canada. So these are former refugees and their children who had integrated into Canadian society, who felt the need to step up and work with the government of Canada to welcome other refugees. That is a Canadian heritage moment, and I'm proud to have been in a country that allowed me to be part of that. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, we celebrate Asian Heritage Month and we stand with Asian Canadians every single day. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Thank you very much, Minister Hussein, for your tireless commitment to support our communities and defend our values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Carrying on your comments about Vietnamese people that are living in Canada, one of my son-in-law is also a descendant of the boat people that came from Vietnam. So we're all part of the same group now.
Notre prochain invité a
Our next
immigré
guest immigrated from India to Canada with her family when she was 5. She grew up in southern Vancouver and took advantage of all what a diversified community and a culturally rich community could offer her. Please, can you come up here?
He has made serving others a cornerstone of his life. He's a former detective with the Vancouver Police Department, a former lieutenant colonel with the British Columbia Regiment, Duke of Connaught's Own, and a longtime advocate for youth education and mentorship programs. Please join us in welcoming the Honorable Harjit Sajjan, Minister of International Development, to the stage. Minister.
I got a double clap for that. Thank you very much for the very kind introduction. But before I begin, I too want to acknowledge that I'm here speaking to you on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples. And Elder, I just want to say, we often say, many of us who are from born in other countries or ancestors, that Canada gave this opportunity. It's not Canada, it's elders, you and your ancestors that gave us this opportunity to succeed, so thank you. And I too want to acknowledge Senator Dr. Vivian Poy for bringing forward this motion and allowing us a tremendous opportunity to be able to celebrate Asian Heritage Month, which is very important to all of us. And now this bold act marked the recognition of communities that have made a presence in this country. Now, it should be honored, and we need to amplify it as well. And as many of my colleagues have already mentioned, this theme, continuing a legacy of greatness, highlights the contributions and achievements made by people of Asian heritage to our communities and throughout our history. Our dedication, our hard work in different sectors, from arts to the government, science to business, and also making creating huge opportunities for Canadians all across the countries. Now, only 100 years ago, people from Asian heritage in Canada were discriminated against, were not allowed to participate fully in Canadian society. We know of our legacy from the Canadian head tax, the purposeful exclusion of the Komagata Maru, the internment camps. Now, these are clear moments where government sanctioned efforts to reduce and excluded many of our communities. But despite these efforts, our ancestors struggled and they achieved. And it's because of their sacrifices that we have made tremendous advances in Canada. Now, Canadians have been elected to members of parliament, and I'd like to acknowledge our members of parliament here. We have senators, and senators, I want to acknowledge all of you. But we've also had people, mentors, and one mentor I want to talk to you about today is Douglas Jung. Now, Douglas Jung is known for being the first MP of Asian descent in the House of Commons, but he was also a veteran. And the reason I say this, most of you may know his history, but I only learned of his history when I was a captain in the military, and I got to attend one of the Chinese Veterans Association's events. And the reason it resonated with me, once I learned his history, he had a huge impact on our war effort. They wanted to join, they put up their hand. But once they joined the Canadian Armed Forces in World War II, they didn't know what to do with them. So they didn't know what to do with them, but the British came calling. And they were recruited into a select, very clandestine organization, trained in Penticton, where the training camp is today. And they were deployed from dangerous situations, not as groups, but as individuals, dropped in enemy lines. And they did tremendous things, only to come back and said, he served your country. But because their work was so classified, no one really even knew what they did, right? But imagine the impact, and their story was told later on. And when I heard that story, I was just touched. And I made it a point to share their story, and it became like a mentor of mine because of the history and what they did. And I tried to emulate. Could I, live up to his past? And at that time, I wasn't thinking of running for being a member of parliament, but here I am. So, they inspired us. And the reason I say this is he wasn't from India; he was Chinese, and that we all inspire one another. And I can talk about so many other folks like Leah Fernandez, Lawrence Kwong, Jess Rien, and obviously the famous Shang-Chi, Simi Liu, who's I'm a comic book fan myself. So much success. So that success that we talk about, it's these barriers have been broken down because of our ancestors who went through so much. Now, while it is important to highlight and celebrate the contributions of Asian Canadians, we have to recognize the challenges that Canadians of Asian heritage face and continue to face: xenophobia and racism. Over the last few years, we have seen an increase of racial discrimination. And in 2020 alone, the hate crimes have increased. Southeast Asian Canadians increased by 300%. But I don't want to talk about a number. We're talking about, somebody's grandma, somebody's sister, somebody's mom. And when Mary told me the story one day when she heard from a constituent of hers where her grandma had to buy pepper spray to feel safe, and that was heartbreaking. No Canadian should have to do that. These attacks have shaken our sense of security and reminded us that despite our advances and successes, that these gains are fragile. Now, leadership matters, and that's why our Prime Minister always stands up against the forces of hatred and intolerance. But there's a chance that gains that we have made can be rolled back, and those who feel threatened by our success. And my message to them is that our success is Canada's success. And we see this. We see this in this room. And we need to keep reminding everybody about that. By working together, we can stand up and fight against anti-Asian discrimination alongside with anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism, homophobia, Islamophobia, and anti-Semitism. All that we all have to come together and fight against. It is our responsibility to step up and stand behind all of the communities that face discrimination and be allies together. Racism and discriminations have no place in our countries, our cities, and especially our communities. And I just want to give you, as we talked about, I want to share a personal fact for you. We talk about the Chinese Canadians' contributions starting from World War II. So at the Vimy 100th anniversary, where I got to go, I visited some of the grounds. I actually found grave sites of Chinese laborers who worked alongside Canadian soldiers at that time, helping to build the defenses. So just these pockets and moments of history are scattered everywhere. And it's that sacrifice that they have made for Canada, all of us that have been made, is the reason why our country is so strong today and will continue to get stronger. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Sajjan, for your service and for being a strong advocate for youth education and mentorship. Your work and dedication are truly an inspiration to all of us. Our next speaker is a devoted community leader who has always believed in the power of public service. She has 20 years of experience in the area of education, women's leadership, job creation, and entrepreneurship. Please join me in welcoming my colleague, the Honorable Mary Ng, Minister of International Trade, Export, Promotion, Small Business, and Economic Development to the stage.
Thank you so very much for that kind introduction, Paul. And Elder Commander, thank you so much, very much for starting us off with those good, in a good way, as they say. For those of us who are settlers or even immigrants to Canada, I think it's really important to remember that Indigenous peoples have always been here and that we all have a role to play in reconciliation today and every day going forward. As I look around this room and as I was walking through, it filled me with absolute joy. We are all together here in person again after 2 long years to be able to celebrate Asian Heritage Month again, a celebration that is very close to my heart. And especially this year's theme, which is just so tremendously fitting, as you've heard from both ministers, continuing a legacy of greatness. And what a legacy we have to celebrate. Et c'est tout un héritage que nous avons à célébrer.
It's quite a heritage, a legacy we have to celebrate here.
From all backgrounds have made an enormous difference and continue to make enormous contributions to Canada. And I love the story that Minister Sajjan shared about Douglas Jung. I'll say a few more names, but my challenge to everyone is the few names that we shared today are but only a few. And the wonderful purpose about Asian Heritage Month here in May is to take the opportunity to learn about our history, that shared history, the contributions that Asian Canadians have made. But you don't actually have to look that far. You can even just look to the either side of you and learn about the wonderful contributions that you are all making and others, other Asian Canadians here in Canada. But take a look at Doc Yip, who fought hard to repeal the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1947. Douglas Jung, of course, that Minister Sajjan has already told a wonderful story about, or Lori Fung, who brought Canadian pride, winning gold at the Olympics in 1984. And look not too far along that theme, where over the last 2 years, who do we see on our television screens daily? Dr. Teresa Tam, who is helping to lead us throughout this pandemic. That is just to name a few. And again, the challenge is learn more about those who made the contributions to the country and those who are making the contributions today and into the future. What we see are great Asian Canadians everywhere. Now, just last week, Minister Sajjan talked about Simu Liu, but the Prime Minister and I kicked off Asian Heritage Month with that Canadian superhero in Simu Liu. He told us about his work and bringing Asian representation to Hollywood. But not all superheroes wear capes or even 10 rings. When I think about Asian Canadian heroes, I think of our teachers who are educating our children. I think about our caregivers and the frontline healthcare workers who are taking care of all of us and our elderly parents. I think about the small business owners who are creating jobs, not only in my neighborhood, but I would say in all of yours as well. All of these great Asian Canadians have paved the way, continue to pave the way, and in turn, I think we all have a responsibility to pave the way for the next generation of Asian Canadian leaders. When I think about my own journey into public life, I'll be very frank with you. I certainly didn't believe, and I know my parents would never have thought that I would aspire to become a member of parliament in our country, let alone a cabinet minister. And as a child growing up here in Canada, I didn't see a lot of people in these offices that looked like me. There were few women, let alone Asian women. And I know that there are so many others who are like me, proud Canadians who were born in a different country, who speak a different language, who practice different faiths, who didn't see themselves represented in these halls in Parliament, in C-suites across the country, or even at events like this that are taking place on Parliament Hill with ministers and senators and so many esteemed Canadian leaders who are in this room, because the barriers are high. And that's why it's so important for us to learn and celebrate about the history, but it's also important to find those allies who are around us. It is those allies who help us, lift us up, open up those doors. So allyship is also really important. Let me give you an example. It's a personal one. It was actually the Prime Minister of Canada. It's the Prime Minister at the time who pushed me to run for office. And I actually said no more than once. But he had to give me that pep talk. And that pep talk went as follows. Mary, we need a government that reflects the diversity and the lived experiences of Canadians. So you must take a look at this. You care about the work that you do, the public service work that you have done over the decades, then why not? Why not go out there and represent Canadians so that you can carry their voices? So now the people of Markham Thornhill, some of you are here, one of the most diverse ridings in the country, have in their member of parliament someone who will reflect their voice and their aspirations and who gets the opportunity to sit around a cabinet table. Together, I, along with my colleagues, a couple of whom you've already heard from, and the Prime Minister, we make deliberate decisions to build an inclusive future for this country and for our kids and grandkids. And as a decision maker and a representative of my heritage, it's important to actively work with my colleagues, with Canadians, to address these barriers that face Canadians, including Asian Canadians. Tackling anti-Asian racism is one of those issues. It's extremely important and it's personal to me. I would say it's personal to all of us in this room. It has been absolutely heartbreaking and unacceptable to see the rise of anti-Asian racism over these past years, but it's also unacceptable to see the rise of anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Black racism, racism against Indigenous people, hate in all of its forms. So we must work together. We saw a 47% increase in crimes against Asian Canadians, and many of those crimes being to women. And to me, this is more than a statistic. And I know that those stories are more than a statistic, or these statistics are more than just that to all of you in this room. Hard shared a story that I shared with him, which was utterly heartbreaking, when a 70-year-old woman asked her son where she can buy pepper spray in order to go out the door to protect herself. This is a parent who worries about their child being bullied at school. It means a woman being scared to walk in the streets for fear of being attacked simply because she's a woman of color. So this is why over the past 2 years, our government has been working to support these important efforts to battle racism of all of its forms. And Minister Hussein, thank you so much for your leadership on this. We've also been working with a coalition of Asian Canadian community leaders from across the country to address anti-Asian racism. And our government, through this work from listening to people, are investing millions of dollars to support the community. And this work will need to continue. And I call on all of us to continue this brave work together. Make no mistake, this government knows your value and your generations of contributions to this country as Asian Canadians, and we will continue to stand side by side to defend each other against all forms of discrimination. So let's use the month of May to collectively learn about Asian Canadians and what they have done to help build Canada and their contributions. And let's work together to continue and build on this theme of the legacy of greatness, not only during Asian Heritage Month, during the month of May, but every month of the year. Now, the MCs, as well as my colleagues, talked about the terrific leadership and the work of Dr. Vivian Poy when she was senator. Her advocacy and her leadership and her perseverance led to the establishment of Asian Heritage Month 20 years ago. Elle a été sénatrice enseignante, auteure.
She was a senator, a writer, and an entrepreneur.
Senator, an educator, an author, and an entrepreneur. But to me, Dr. Poy has always been an inspiration and a role model. And I want to thank Dr. Poy for paving the way for me and for the countless other Asian Canadian women. Now, I want to welcome her virtually. Dr. Vivian Poy, thank you. Merci.
Good evening, Minister Hussein, Minister Ng, Minister Sajjan, honored guests and friends. I'm really sorry I'm not able to join you in person in Ottawa this evening. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I feel very nostalgic because this is the 20th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of May as Asian Heritage Month in Canada, which took place at a gala held in the Museum of Nature. The signatories were former Minister Sheila Copps, former Minister Claudette Bradshaw, 2 MPs, and I. It was a momentous occasion for Canadians of Asian heritage. Citizens flew in from different parts of Canada to witness the event. Asians who were always considered quiet, kept their heads down, and worked hard had finally gained visibility and noted by the federal government. Since then, the annual celebration held by the federal government was a much sought after event by citizens in Ottawa and the surrounding areas. The musical performances by the children were the highlight of the programs. Asian Heritage Month societies have since sprung up across Canada, from British Columbia to PEI, and over the years, more and more schools, universities, organizations, businesses, as well as different levels of government have joined in the celebration. These month-long celebrations highlight Asian Canadian contributions to the arts, music, literature, sports, government, the military, and many professions. The Ottawa Asian Heritage Month Society was established very soon after, with a variety of programs as well as a gala concert every May. For many years, together with the Ottawa Carleton District School Boards, I held the Era 21 networking breakfast for young Canadians in the Parliamentary Restaurant, participated by students from diverse backgrounds. Our youth is the future of our country. During Asian Heritage Month, we honor and remember the sacrifices of Asian Canadians who came before us, for without whom Canada would not be the country it is today. It is unfortunate that COVID-19 has been an excuse for some in Canadian society to carry out racist attacks on anything Asian. It is a wake-up call to all levels of government and to every citizen to be vigilant, to ponder the next step in the education of our youth, in order that our diversity we so treasure continues to flourish and Canada remains an inclusive and prosperous country. Now, 20 years later, the torch has been passed to the younger generation. Asian Heritage Month is a time to share and a time to learn from each other. Its essence is not only about Canadians of Asian heritage. It is about all of us. Thank you, Minister Hussein, for hosting this celebration. I wish everyone a wonderful evening.
Merci beaucoup à la ministre Ng et à
Thank you very much, Minister Ng, and thank you to the former Senator Vivian Poy for all what you've done and continue to do for our communities every day. As we said earlier this evening, the Asian Heritage Month highlights not just the strength of our communities, but also it's the opportunity to celebrate the many youths who are greatly contributing to our future by having a positive impact today.
And up next is a performer who does just that. He's a spoken word poet, hip hop artist, radio host, and youth worker, and is the former co-director of the Urban Legends Poetry Collective here in Ottawa. He created the free after-school youth writing program, Youth Speak, with the Ottawa Public Library. His poem, My Hero Drives a Cab, was featured on Button Poetry, and he was part of the CBC documentary In Their Words. And he's also represented Ottawa a total of 9 times nationally for spoken words. Please join us in welcoming Khalifa Apollo the Child Hamdan to the stage.
Did you really think we wouldn't notice? Did you really think we wouldn't notice? We, the Netflix generation, no stranger to Hollywood and its many tentacles, consuming and binging hours upon hours of media. Did you really think we wouldn't notice? Standing on these stages, I see so many beautiful faces and people of different ethnicities, gender norms, and shading. Did you really think we wouldn't notice? It's 2022 Hollywood, and my people are still struggling to get cast in scraps. Watching the silver screen, it seems they only prefer those with blonde hair and blue eyes. As a kid, I remember watching Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis killing off my people in True Lies. Ironically, at that point in my life, I hadn't seen so many Middle Eastern men in one film. It made me realize that historically, my people were more than just terrorists and fearmongers. We were poets and scholars, but watch as our beating hearts get silenced by movie projector hum. It made me realize, where are our heroes? Who do we have to look up to? We, the children of desert sand. Jake Gyllenhaal is not the prince of our Persia. The gods of our Egypt were not Anglo-Saxon. A fan of Batman, I just want to see a Ra's al Ghul who looks like me, not Liam Neeson. And to Mr. Guy Ritchie, how can you struggle with casting the live action Aladdin when after 9/11 we became the greatest actors? Watch us act unabashed, unafraid, unflinching. Watch us justify our existence to you by bending over backwards. You claim you couldn't find a Jasmine. Meanwhile, our princesses and queens live in fear for wearing their hijabs when my sister tells me it makes her a visible target. Guy Ritchie, I wonder if your casting will ever fully grasp that. And let's not pretend like Aladdin didn't look like a white man with a tan in the animated version. Jafar, the villain, seemingly the only one with Middle Eastern features. It made me realize, who do we have to look up to? Where are we on your stages? Where are we when they pull back the curtains? So this is an affirmation of my olive skin to remind my bones of the home and the soil they'll one day lie in as I eventually rot and spoil and seen. Roll the credits on my biopic. Knowing how things go, I'll be casted and acted by Tom Hanks. They'll call it Last Iraqi Poet. White man says all of those with melanin. See, this Dances with Wolves. This is The Last Samurai. This is Pocahontas. This is Lawrence of Arabia. And the list goes on and on and on and on. No one's safe. They even sent a white savior to those blue aliens in Avatar. Underrepresented. We must have missed your casting call. So this is an affirmation of my olive skin to remind myself that I am golden despite silver screen lack of focus. It's 2022 Hollywood. Did you really think we wouldn't notice?
Thank you, Khalifa, for that moving performance of Did You Really Think We Would Notice? Our next speaker is a passionate community advocate. Over the years, he worked with the US, Chinese, Japanese, Bulgarian, African, and Caribbean embassies and high commissions on cultural events in the city.
Il fait partie du conseil d'administration.
He's part of the board of directors of the board of the Asian Heritage Month of Ottawa, a not-for-profit organization celebrating the various contributions of Canadians of Asian origin. Along
to the stage.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us here tonight, live and in person and on Facebook Live. I just want to start off by thanking the staff at the Department of Heritage who took care of all the speakers and the talent downstairs. So to Nicole, to Sylvie, and to V, if you're here, please stand up, and if you see them, please clap because they did a great job. I'd just like to thank Minister Hussein, Minister Ng, Minister Sajjan, as well Senator Poy for launching Asian Heritage Month more than 20 years ago. And I also want to take this time to thank two people who, for the last 20 years, really grew Asian Heritage Month and connected all the groups in Ottawa of Asiatic descent and created a great event. So for Dr. Alec Chu and Monica Wu, if you're here, if you can please stand up and let everyone know who you are and how underappreciated you are, I think, by the city. So. Now, the theme of this year's event is continuing a legacy of greatness. So I want to start off by talking about a musician who performed in the Asian Heritage Month Gala in 2012. I want to congratulate him because he did really well at the Grammys. And Mr. Ron Korb recorded a CD with Ricky Cage and from the Police, Stuart Copeland. It wasn't his first nomination, but his first Grammy. So I just want to thank him and congratulate him. It was well deserved. If you're not familiar with his name, you've probably heard his work just because he does a lot of music for Tom Cruise movies and movies by Ang Lee. So he did really well. Now, if you go to the website, www.asianheritagemonth.net, you'll see there's a whole host of events during the month of May. Now, they're not overrepresented in the arts at all. There's also events in the fields of law, science, food, and there's three I want to talk about. Now, these events are all low cost or no cost, and they're also in person or virtually through webinars. So one coming up, which is pretty exciting, is talking about Asian perseverance and innovation through food. That's coming up this Saturday. There's one coming up in a couple of days with another former presenter here, Sajjan Lee with the National Film Board. She'll be moderating a panel discussion with us. And then finally, here at the NAC, there's a free concert by Auto Rickshaw on the 25th of May. So for those here, check out the box office after, or for those at home, go to the website to get details of getting tickets for that. I just want to thank Khalifa for his great poem, and he was talking about underrepresentation of minorities in film. I want to close with a personal story that I think will help correct that. About a year ago, I was asked to drive a woman from Ottawa to Toronto. She had been laid off due to COVID at her office job and asked me if I could find her work in the film industry. And I said I'd look around. Her name was Asma, and I called her a couple weeks later and said, you know, there's a film series for Netflix shooting not that far from my mom's house. They need a wardrobe assistant. Do you want to try it? And she applied, and she told me, so I gave her some tips as to what to say during the interview, and she got the gig. Now, it was supposed to last 6 weeks, and she thought once it's done, she'd head back to Ottawa. But at the end of the 6 weeks, she got asked to work on wardrobe for another Amazon series called Jack Reacher. And that was to go to the end of August, and she thought she'd go back to Ottawa, look for an office job. Well, when that ended, she got a call to do the wardrobe for Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And that just released last week on Paramount Plus. And if you notice some of the outfits, they do have a Middle Eastern and Asian flair to a lot of the outfits. I'm very proud of her success in the film industry, and prouder still that she was so willing to share her cultural background to everyone through film and TV. Now, just as an update, Asma is now doing wardrobe and styling for Guillermo del Toro, who won the Oscar in Toronto. So look for her stuff on TV and film. Once again, in closing, I have to have everyone please check out the website at www.asianheritagemonth.net. And who knows, maybe the person you see on stage will be winning a Grammy someday, or the person sitting beside you will be styling for the stars. Thank you very much and have a happy Asian Heritage Month.
Oops. Thank you, Sanjay, for the incredible work that you and your team at the Ottawa Asian Heritage Month Society do to uplift and celebrate the many Asian communities in Canada.
Notre prochain invité a consacré
Our next guest has spent many hours in presenting the wealth and the variety of Asian communities in Canada.
Dr. Kenny is most known as the chairman of the Federation of Chinese Canadians in Markham and the Chinese Chamber of Commerce in Markham. And in 2003, he founded and became the chairman of the Taste of Asia Festival, which is held annually in the city of Markham.
Dr. Ng a reçu de nombreux prix.
Dr. Ng has received many prizes and awards, such as the Golden Jubilee Medal, and in 2019, the title of member of the Ontario Medical Association.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, Minister Hussein, Minister Sajjan, Minister Ng, honored guests, friends. I'm truly honored to be invited to speak in this Asian Heritage Month Gala tonight. As mentioned, I'm just one of the person, maybe promoted as part of the legacy, and I'll share that with you. Since its inception, I'm honored and humbled to say there's not a day when I don't feel blessed for living in this country as an Asian Canadian. Given what's happening in Ukraine, I appreciate being Canadian even more. Consider how lucky we are in Canada, how with its multiculturalism policy is integrating our diverse people so well, and how collectively is building a strong, dynamic, and harmonious society. Consider also how effective your recognition for our ethno-cultural peoples is, like the Philippine Heritage Month and tonight's Asian Heritage celebration. You are telling us how valued we are, how affirming it is to our national identities, and how important we are in the task of nation building. In doing so, our communities have responded positively to you. I speak through years of organizing activities in the Chinese community in Greater Toronto area, including Markham, where I have practiced as a medical doctor since 1981. In 1989, we organized the Federation of Chinese Canadians in Markham, as PA Paul Chang mentioned, through which we unified and empowered our people and became a contributing force for many major social, cultural, and political awareness projects. And I'm proud to add numerous crucial campaigns for charitable causes like hospitals, disaster relief, United Way, and long-term homes, to name a few. This community work had come with a silver lining, and that's the interconnectedness with our Asian brothers and sisters, as in a family of nations helping each other to grow. In 2011, in 2001, we banded together to form the Canadian Federation of Intercultural Friendship, so we could share our histories, cultural heritage, and aspirations. One of the member organizations who helped found this with me is the Association of Progressive Muslims of Canada, whose president Mubin Hajar is also present here. Then in 2003, we launched the Taste of Asia Festival in Markham, showcasing extravaganza of Asian ethnic food and traditional dances. It's now one of the major street festivals and attractions in North America, and also demonstrating the fineness in cooperation and partnership among our Asian partners in Canada. I believe it's because of my work as a medical professional and volunteer in these many worthy causes that I was invited here tonight. As a doctor, I treat patients. And if one is an ethnic minority, I also look at their mental health as may be affected by ill treatment because of their race. Science tells us racial discrimination makes you sicker than your actual condition is. That's why we are fighting back to stop it. So with our partners in the Asian communities, I'm confident we will continue to be vigilant in having tolerance, respect, and harmony in Markham and beyond. How we got to this point in our history is a credit to the high level of cooperation and the pride among our Asian community leaders in addressing the challenges as they occur. An example is in 1995, when the Chinese in Markham became a target of racism, we immediately mobilized our Asian community to counter it. And the outcome was the adoption of a policy on diversity and inclusion that also became adopted as the standard in many places in Canada. In 2003, when the SARS epidemic struck and again targeted the Chinese, we responded with the Taste of Asia Festival to bring healing, respect, and unity back in Markham and the GTA. Recently, with the pandemic, fended by inflamed rhetoric and incidents of hate crimes, the specter of racism was again upon us, victimizing Chinese and Asians. Again, let me say how better off we are doing in Canada. I believe that the proactive approach of acceptance, tolerance, and mutual respect is the correct approach. It is adopting to each other as brothers and sisters in good faith that really works. It's the secret ingredient why we are successful in Markham and beyond. And I enjoin everyone to continue this legacy. And thank you for your attention. Thank you for the Asian Heritage Month celebration. Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kenning, for your work and dedication to fostering unity in the most challenging of times.
Notre prochaine invitée est une véritable source.
Our next guest is a real source of inspiration. She has been playing an important role in her community for 40 years, created different associations such as the Asian Foundation and ACTT Foundation. She has sat on more than 30 committees and boards at the local, provincial, and national levels.
Her community service has earned her an Immigrant Distinction Award, YWCA's Women's of Distinction Award, and the Chinese Canadian Legend Award, the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Award for Multiculturalism and Community Services, and the Canada 125th Commemorative Award for Community Services, and the Queen Elizabeth 60th Jubilee Award. To top it off, she now sits as the chair of the board of the Canada Race Relations Foundation. Please join us in welcoming Teresa Woo-Paw to the stage.
Thank you very much for the very kind introduction, and good evening, everyone. While I was listening to the many speakers, I was also thinking in my head, I'm so glad that I did not study the program carefully, but that I have to follow such an impressive list of speakers. But here I go, because I would not pass this opportunity to join you on this very special occasion, to also convey a message from an organization that I deeply believe in, the Canadian Race Relations Foundation. So good evening, respected friends and colleagues. Bonsoir, chers amis et collègues.
Good evening, friends and colleagues.
Honorable Hussein, Honorable Sajjan, and also I think Minister have to leave early. Great to see all of you here. It's wonderful for me to be joining you tonight on the unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. Reconciliation is very important to me as an Asian Canadian woman who knows how important it is to live and raise a family in a country which respects one's traditions, one's histories, and also one's human rights. As board chair of the Canadian Race Relations Foundation, and as a member of this society, I'm deeply committed to supporting every effort towards truth and reconciliation in collaboration with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities. I'm deeply humbled to be participating in the 20th anniversary of Asian Heritage Month. I've been involved in organizing Asian Heritage Month since 2000. I'm also one of the millions of Asian Canadians who have been impacted by historic and systemic racism and discrimination. My great-grandparents came to North America as laborers and were separated from their spouses for over 3 decades because of unfair and unjust racist policies. When I came to Canada, later as an adolescent, I hoped that I would be able to make a positive impact despite this history. Now, decades later, I can say with humility that I have been blessed to work in multiple ways to help find solutions to the issues and concerns that preoccupy not only Asian Canadians, but all Canadians. I've done so as elected official, a community builder, a social worker, and currently as the chair of the Canadian Race Relations Foundation. As it hasn't always been easy for me to do this. I've often been the only Asian Canadian woman in the room, the first to be elected to the Alberta legislature, the first to be elected as the school trustee in my district. I've been told time and time again to consider my tone, my view. My participation is often subject to judgment and limitations. Yet I did not let those efforts diminish my presence. As the mother of 3 Canadian-born children, I have always been keenly and deeply aware how critical it is to stand up for a present and a future in which my children and all children would be able to participate in with every aspect of their identity, fully intact, unapologetic, and proud of who they are. Those values have informed so much of my work and advocacy. While the theme of tonight's event is continuing a legacy of greatness, I want to emphasize how difficult it continues to be for our communities to participate fully in the greatness and potential of this great country. Not only has the pandemic has wreaked havoc on our sense of safety and security, we have all had to endure 2 frightening years of the multi-layered crisis. But specifically on Asian Canadian communities who have had to wear a heavy burden of blame, suspicion, and hate. These have surrounded us as a result of stereotypes, misinformation, and ignorance. It is a sad reality that too many of us are fearful for our safety while we are just walking in our neighborhoods. And many of us worry about discrimination at our workplaces or seeking or while providing public services. These fears can curtail our capacity to fulfill the greatness that all of us have within. Many Asian Canadians have been taught, like me, to be humble, not to brag about our achievements. This means too often our communities are reluctant to fully articulate how the current toxic climate is attempting to stifle our immense presence and power. While there's no doubt that our valuable of our valuable place in the Canadian beautiful mosaic, there are those who attempt to shake our resolve to fully belong. At the foundation, we are committed to supporting that resolve. For those who are not familiar with the Canadian Race Relations Foundation, it was created by the Government of Canada as a Crown Corporation in 1996, as part of the Japanese-Canadian Redress Agreement to reaffirm the principles of justice and equality for all in Canada. We are undertaking many initiatives to that end, including, as Canada's leading Crown agency, dedicated to working towards the elimination of racism and all forms of racial discrimination. The CRF is determined to help build a more inclusive and equitable Canadian society. So we're undertaking many initiatives to that end, including co-chairing a national task force on hate with the National Roundtable of the Chiefs of Police that aims to establish national standards for how police address hate in our communities. Working with partners like the YWCA on a campaign to champion the rights of racialized peoples, including women, to feel safe online. And as directed in the 2021 federal budget, the CRF is currently establishing a national coalition to support Asian Canadian communities. And this is set to launch this fall. Asian Canadian racism cannot and must not stop our communities from participating fully. I can assure you that is not going to stop me. I encourage all of you to join the CRF in that effort, to connect with us via social media or through our events. We must work collectively to ensure that hate and racism do not prevent the fulfillment of an honorable legacy of greatness that started with those who came before us and will continue long after we are gone. So thank you very much. Merci.
Thank you to Teresa and the Canada Race Relations Foundation for your tireless dedication and the work you do in fighting racism, discrimination, and hate in Canada. It is an honor to have you here with us this evening. Like Teresa, I also have 3 children that are born in Canada. My daughter-in-law of Chinese heritage is from Argentina. One of my son-in-law is Hungarian, born in Romania. And my other son-in-law, as you know, is Vietnamese background, born in Canada. Oh, I still have something to go. My apologies. Founded in 1995 by Savita Sharma, Upsana produces exemplary, traditional, innovative, and collaborative work of Kathak, Odissi, classical and contemporary dances.
Upasana rassemble des danseurs, des chorégraphes.
Upasana brings together dancers and choreographies in the field of dance. Their role is to create new generations of dancers and get the support of the local, provincial, and the national levels.
Dance to the stage.
Namaste. I'm here to present to you classical Indian dance in the style of Kathak, which is from the north of India. I am Savita Sharma, the Artistic Director for Upasana, the Spirit of Dance, and I'm here with my two students, Nikita Kamble Bagal and Megha Rao. My performance is based on two parts. The first is tribute and invocation to Lord Shiva, who is the Lord of dance, and paying tribute to all the shows that will be in the month of May to have a successful presentation. The second dance is all technique of Kathak, showing the pirouettes and the technical footwork, and the dancer will exhibit to you 53 turns on the stage at one time. It's all part of the technique of Kathak. I present to you Shiva Vandana. Thank you.
Namah Shivaya.
Test. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you to Savita and Apsana's dance for that wonderful moving performances. Our next speaker is Farida Sharmin, who is part of the organization Empower Him, a grassroots youth group aimed at empowering women of color through a curated journey of personal and professional growth, leading to enhanced leadership capabilities and independence in decision-making.
En plus de son rôle dans
In
Empower,
addition to her role in Emporium, Farida recently obtained a master's in neuroscience from the University of Ottawa. She's excited about scientific research that can help us better understand the brain and mental health.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's incredible event. And I guess it's safe to say that it's really nice to actually get to gather in person after 2 long years of the pandemic. So my name, as mentioned, is Fariba Sharmin, and I'm speaking to you today on behalf of a local grassroots organization based here in Ottawa called Empower Him. Now, before I tell you what Empower Him is, I want to give you a little bit, sorry. Hopefully you can. Okay. Sorry, I wanted to give you a little bit of background about myself and how I became involved with this organization. I am a first-generation Bangladeshi immigrant, having moved to Canada in 2005 with the rest of my family at the age of 8. And over these almost 17 years of my life in Canada, I've really grown to appreciate a lot of the privileges, the freedoms, and the luxuries that I had growing up in this country. I was aware that I had access to a lot of things quite a lot more easier than a lot of my friends and family back home. And for this, I was extremely grateful. But at the same time, as I matured, I realized that I was facing an internal problem. You can say it's kind of an internal crisis. And this problem is what I like to call a battle of dual identities. And what I mean by this is that I was struggling to fit in with Canadian society and culture while also maintaining the connections of my South Asian roots. And because of this problem that I was having growing over the years, I really needed a community that could resonate with my unique experiences and my challenges, and with whom I could really share my story. And ultimately, this is how I stumbled upon Empower Him and ended up finding the community that I had been searching for so many years. So what exactly is Empower Him? Empower Him is a grassroots community organization led by women of color for women of color to help empower them in their journeys of personal and professional development. The motivation behind our programming stemmed from discussions with our community, which really expressed that women of color face significant challenges when it came to reaching their potential in different areas of their lives. And some of the problems that a lot of these women were telling us about were things like a lack of authentic, visible role models, lack of access to culturally relevant safe spaces and resources, lack of financial independence and hindrances to that, as well as reduced opportunities to network and receive training in the workplace and other areas. Not only this, but women of color are statistically underrepresented in leadership positions. They face discrimination and incidents of racism, not only in the professional sphere, but also in their personal lives due to their marginalized identities. Our vision at Empowerum is to create a future where these issues are addressed, where women of color from all different backgrounds, from all walks of life, can come together and feel that like they are included and that they are celebrated for their unique identities. Over the past few years, we have been fortunate to be able to help our participants build leadership capabilities, independence in decision-making, and skills to self-advocate. Most importantly, we have been able to give our participants access to an enriching community that they can learn from and feel inspired by. And we were really able to accomplish these things by designing spaces with an intersectional and inclusive lens, where women of color from diverse backgrounds could come together and feel celebrated. And with this design and vision in mind, we created a virtual program called Our Way Forward in 2020, which facilitates peer-to-peer mentorship for young women of color across Canada to help them navigate areas of their personal and or professional lives. And what's really unique about this program is that it connects peers with shared lived experiences using a holistic approach to target both personal and professional developmental goals, so not just one or the other. A program catered exclusively to the needs and experiences of women of color in this way has not existed previously, and this was a gap that we were trying to address in our community. Over the 10 years of its operation, Empowerum has worked with over 2,000 volunteers and facilitated over 35 events. In the two small cohorts of the Our Way Forward program alone, over the past 2 years of the pandemic, we have had 114 mentee and mentor applicants, of which we were only able to facilitate 50 due to the limited resources that we had. What I'm trying to show you with these numbers is that there is a high interest and need for programs like Our Way Forward and for organizations like Empowerum. We still have a long way to go when it comes to providing women of color with the opportunities that they need and deserve, but I'm very confident that Empowerum is on the right track. And what I'm also confident about is that to me and the rest of our team, our work is really our legacy of greatness as youth change makers in our community. And we hope to continue this initiative and our work for many, many, many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Fariba, for your dedication to creating safe spaces and opportunities for women of color through Empowerum. Your passion and achievements are inspiring. At this time, I also like to acknowledge the presence of Minister Marcy Ian. Is Minister here? She was here. Thank you. Our next speaker is a proud public servant who's passionate about the role that public institutions play in shaping Canada and the lives of Canadians. Please join me in welcoming Deputy Minister Daniel Kwan Watson to the stage.
Thank you very much. Et bonsoir. C'est un honneur d'être
Hi,
ici.
it's a great honor for me to be here tonight on the Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory to talk to you about the theme of this evening and of the Asian Heritage Month. That is the theme of maintaining the tradition of excellence.
There have been people of Asian ancestry in Canada. There are many ways of seeing that history, but tonight in here, I'd like to think of it as being in 3 chapters, with a 4th chapter that is decided not yet whether or not it will be written. The first chapter was demanding and finding a voice, whether it was responding to the segregation of schooling in Victoria and Vancouver in 1907, whether or not it was responding to the denial of basic rights and services, or the ability to simply engage in basic decisions about their own lives. Those first generations of Asian Canadians paid an enormous price and ensured that they had a voice, ensured that it would be heard, and that everyone knew that when it was needed, it would never again remain silent. The second chapter in the voice of Asian Canadians was the chapter that was insisting that those voices were Canadian voices. It took 70 years of struggle to convince people that Asian Canadians deserved citizenship, and it happened in the 1940s. Ce troisième chapitre.
This third chapter is the one that many of us today are experiencing. And this is the one that I am convinced is benefiting all Canadians. The chapter in which all our Canadian voices can and are invited to add to the richness and the strength of the society and to the Canadian experience, even though we're still trying to be better.
Aspects of all three of these chapters. I was very pleased that Minister Sajjan referred to Douglas Young, because I was about to have to rewrite my speech very quickly sitting in the front row here. William Lohr was born in Victoria in 1909 to parents who had immigrated from China. His life was long and remarkable. When the Vancouver Chinatown Soccer Club won the Lower Mainland Championship in 1933, he was one of the team's managers. He became the first ever federal public servant of Chinese Canadian ancestry in the 1930s when he became a radio operator with the Department of Communications. When the Second World War broke out, as Minister Sajjan pointed out, there was a great debate in many Asian Canadian communities about whether or not the young men and women should fight and die for a country that wouldn't even give them citizenship. But in enormous numbers, they said, we will prove that we are worthy citizens and we will go and we will fight. He tried to join 3 times. Each time he got turned down. Very simple reason. You're of Chinese ancestry, we won't take you. But by 1943, the requirements of continuing to fight the war had changed the situation such that he was accepted. Became the very first ever officer in the Royal Canadian Navy to be of Chinese Canadian ancestry. Became the very first officer in the entire British Commonwealth to be an officer in the Navy. At the end of the war, he was given the order to cause the surrender of the infamous prisoner of war camp at Hong Kong. And he went aboard, he went on land, went to the camp, and through a feat of genius, convinced the enemy to surrender the camp without doing what they had promised to do to the soldiers. And he went up at the end of this period of time to these soldiers who had been held, Canadian and other British Commonwealth soldiers, under horrific conditions for 4 years, and found the Canadians. And he said to them, "Are you glad to see another Canadian?" And that was his legacy there that day. Are you glad to see another Canadian? William Lohr had no idea who I am. But I'm very proud that when he passed away in 2012, this first ever public servant of Chinese Canadian ancestry had his lifetime overlap with my time as the first ever deputy minister of Chinese Canadian ancestry in Canada's public service. William Lohr's life encapsulated elements of all 3 of the chapters that I mentioned earlier. Demanding and finding a voice, insisting that that voice was Canadian, and using it to add to the richness and the strength of this great country. I'm very happy to talk to him in the context of Asian History Month, but I'm going to be happier one day when the Canadian War Museum recognizes him as a Canadian war hero. I mentioned at the beginning of my remarks a 4th chapter, one that we as Canadians must choose each and every day as to whether or not we're going to write it. One of the great lessons of the first 3 chapters is that accepting and valuing the immense strength and richness that different faces, accents, languages, ideas, values, religions, and perspectives have to bring to Canada was not always an easy journey. It was sometimes achieved at significant cost to those who wrote those chapters. In the end, however, what we have learned through those lessons have been critical and indispensable ingredients in making Canada such a remarkable place. Asian History Month is in part about remembering historic individuals and moments. This history, though, is one of so many lives lived with the deliberate and explicit purpose of making Canada ever greater, ever stronger, and ever a richer society, pursued by so many who were willing to pay a significant price to make this so. I can think of no more fitting a tribute to the continuing legacy of greatness than remembering these lessons, adding our own, and writing that fourth chapter in ways that would have exceeded even their greatest dreams. Merci.
Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le sous-ministre Kwan Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Minister Kwan Watson, for those key words. We're very grateful for having you here tonight, and we hope that the Asian Heritage Month event this evening opens a window to experiences and stories and the deeply enriching diversity of the Asian communities across Canada through different forms of leadership and commitment.
I just wanted to add that as a community, I know that when we are presented with success, we are often told to be humble or silent. But this month, I encourage all Canadians to discover more about the continued legacy of greatness that Canadians of Asian heritage contribute to every day. On behalf of the Government of Canada, we thank you for being here with us this evening. Once again, happy Asian Heritage Month to all. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'd like to invite the ministers to come up to the stage and all the performers that came in tonight to take a group photograph, please. Deputy Minister, can you please come up? Have the other performers? Yes, come on up, please. Dr. Teresa, come up.